I think it's incredibly important to link institutional effectiveness and equity in a really meaningful way. And often researchers don't see themselves as having a really active voice, unfortunately. So I feel like it's a way to kind of empower our field to have a really active role in equity work.
And I just want to follow up to being like agents of change. So like that's another thing with the researchers. Like all I can do is provide the data, but at the end of the day, you can also be the agent of change and have those hard conversations.
Absolutely. And I think, we have to equip our researchers with those kinds of skills, though. A lot of us weren't necessarily trained to have those difficult conversations. We may have been trained in research methods or backgrounds in psychology, economics, sociology, business, but we often weren't taught about social justice aside from being our college classes. We weren't taught how to apply that to this work. And so I think this is just, again, a really great opportunity to highlight the collaboration that occurs between our offices and other offices on campus and to make it really impactful for the whole institution.
Yeah, and I would also add to it the idea that it doesn't like your structure at your institution isn't it's not going to hinder it, right? Everyone always think, oh, I can't do that at mine because it's structured this way. So I think it's important to realize that you have to find creative solutions around to make it work.
Yeah, and I think if there was one thing we could ask that people would take away from this session, it would be that they have some tools and resources to be able to go back to their campuses and model equity mindedness in whatever their role is, but particularly for those in the research, planning, and institutional effectiveness field. Because we're often sidelined with questions about whether it's the data pieces themselves and the parameters, or it's just defense mechanisms to redirect the blame to students or to the K-12 system or to some other group. It's really on us as colleges to better serve our students. And so we need to make sure that our community is well equipped to respond to those questions and redirect the conversations to improvement of the institution and making it become more student ready.
And so, what do you think out of the presentation, the topics we covered? What are the biggest things you think that would advance student success at an institution?
I think looking at equity and institutional effectiveness at multiple levels is probably the most meaningful way to look at it, because you can have institutional practices and policies that are in place that can help students, but it's not necessarily going to impact the individual interactions between instructors and students or classified staff, frontline staff and students. So I think you have to look at it from all those different levels, and I hope that folks that were in the session today got that message, that you really do have to work with folks at whatever their level is. We often present data at an institutional level, and it's not always immediately clear to departments how they can use that, or individual practitioners. So I think one of the things that was a takeaway, I hope, for folks was that they can actually work with individual practitioners and departments and really try to make the data meaningful and actionable.
Yeah, and I think the other part that I would like to like touch base with you with is the idea that of your own biases that you have and owning what is actually presented in front of you. So a lot of times people will say, "Well, that's not really me. I'm not that way. I'm not this. I'm not that." So, what would you recommend in those cases and for people to move forward?
Well, I think it's definitely a journey. So you're working on changing hearts and minds, and that takes time. So you have to provide professional development and resources to people, and you have to create a safe space for them to ask questions. And I think that's not always easy to do in a large group, but I think the training has to start with your IRIE office, honestly, and equity, the equity shop, if it's in the office with institutional effectiveness or not. That can be a real collaboration where you can actually have that kind of relationship and trainings that are offered in tandem for the campus, as well as the office itself. It can serve as a model for the rest of the college.